Good morning, everyone. I hope you're all having a fantastic day. Today, I just wanted to get on and talk about relationship burnout and wanting more and how you deserve more. And so, from this point of view, I wanted to explore the ways that we can get more and the ways that we can ask for more and actually feel heard. So, the ways that we can ask for more are working on our communication skills, of course, and being able to frame what we're saying in a way that the other person is likely to hear it and respond positively. So, to illustrate, you get more bees with honey, right? So if you were to say, you never give me hugs and you don't touch me unless you want something. That, hearing that from the other person's perspective, of course, is going to hit a lot harder than, honey, my love language is touch. And, when you hug me and hold me or even just caress my arm, it really feels loving to me. And I really need that. Would you consider doing more of that for me, please? And that's just gonna hit differently, right? So there's ways that we can express our needs without the other person becoming defensive or feeling like they're being told that they're doing something wrong. And the problem is that a lot of times people don't have that insight as to what their own love language is. And that's an issue. So, start with that. How do you feel loved? When people do something for you, does that make you feel loved? Like if you came home to a clean kitchen, aside from the fact that it's just, one less thing that you have to do, and we all appreciate that, it feels different to people whose love language are acts of service. Or, if one of the things that you like are words of affirmation and you get a text midway through the day from your significant other that tells you how much they appreciate you and the what you bring to their life and the positive energy that you contribute to their lives, that's going to hit a little differently for you if your words of affirmation love language, then maybe coming home to that empty sink. Not that you won't appreciate the empty sink, but it's not going to feel the same. And so when we're wanting more in our relationship, it's really important to know ourselves first. Know what we want. How can you ask for what you want if you're just kind of like, well, things could be better. Well, how could they be better? What could you be doing to make them better? And what could your partner be doing to make it better? And what kind of conversations could you have around that? As opposed to, I'm so unhappy. Our life sucks. This isn't how I imagined our relationship was going to be, or I feel taken for granted, or, this isn't how we started out, so I feel like I was duped. All of those things, right? Those can come up in longer term relationships. So it's important to get clear about what you want. And then also maybe even doing some work around your attachment style and sort of where that comes from and what shaped your attachment style and how does that show up in your relationship, right? So if you're avoidant, and your partner's expressing to you, I need to hear more from you, what you need and want and whatever, and you're not able to express that, or you get more defensive than maybe the situation warrants. Those are things that you need to explore, and those are things that you can do as an individual to, level up yourself, right? So it's important to know what you want. It's important to be able to express what you want and to be heard in a respectful and open way. And you can create the ground for that to happen, right? So choosing I need, I feel, I want statements instead of you never, you should, that sort of thing. That'll go a long way. And then, doing that exploration for yourself. Can you be more? And can you be more even if the other person doesn't become more? Or and what benefit would that have to your life, right? So it's really incumbent on us as an individual to do that work, and to not just expect for the other person to do the work, and to expect that you're both going to show up having done some work, and to be able to talk about that and share that experience, and through that sharing grow stronger, and through supporting each other through each of your individual healing journeys, right? So if your partner is not quite providing some of the things that you're needing, and while they might be amazing providers in other ways, and we should celebrate those things and make sure that they know how much we do see and appreciate those things, we can do that in a way so that we still can insert our needs into that equation. So we can kind of create a little sandwich whereby, we start with the positive things that we do love about that person and the value that they bring to our, family and our, our relationship. And then we can ask for what we need in that really respectful and not offensive way. And then we can kind of finish it off with the reminder of, how much we do want to grow and expand and continue to evolve as, either as a couple or as a, more dynamic relationship in the sense of like a poly relationship or whatever relationship dynamic we're talking about. And it doesn't just apply to romantic cohabitating relationships here. Like these sort of principles or ideas, if you put these into practice, they'll help all of your relationships. So, just to give an example of my own experience with this is that, I've been with my spouse for 30 years now. We've been married for 25, and I've talked about this before, but I'm open about the fact that we've had our ups and downs, and we've weathered some storms, and some of them at times felt like they were going to just sort of wash over us almost like a tsunami, right? So, and that's just life, right? Like life things happen and they're challenging and they're heartbreaking and whatever. But I remember at a certain point, and this is after we had kids, that we were having a really hard time getting on the same page as far as, parenting styles and philosophies. And I felt like I was doing all of the emotional work in the relationship. So it was I felt like this dynamic was set up whereby I would do all of the reading and the research and best practices and try to learn different ways to become the kind of parents that we were agreeing on the concept of what we were trying to create in our lives. We just had divergent views on how to get there. And so I felt, though, that it was all on me to figure out how to sort of bridge the gap. And so at one point I remember saying to him, like, I need you to level up. And I know that sounds kind of antagonistic, and I recognize now that it was. However, I had already expressed, I feel like I'm doing all of this work. I feel like I do all the work, and then I figure it all out and kind of, eat it all up, and then I spit it back to you like a mama bird feeding a baby bird. Like, I have to give you the condensed Reader's Digest version of it, and always sort of try to highlight certain things that, like, these are certain things that, we could work on or whatever. And that gets exhausting. So it was like, I had to say to him, like, I need you to take on more of that, and take less of it, or take some of it off my plate for me. And so, maybe the way that I expressed it wasn't the greatest. And I certainly have approached it differently in, recent years. But I also know that now when I do approach him with things that were, maybe having some conflict around, that he has the language and the communication skills now to be able to receive what I'm saying, and he's done the work. He can kind of sit with it and mull it over and do what he needs to do in his own mind to get to a place where he can come back and we can have a discussion about it. So often in our early years it was just sort of like, you don't do this and I need you to do that, and so it was very much combative, and we had to learn how to lovingly communicate our needs. And that said, I mean, it's not like there's not times when things don't get heated, but they're very rare now, and we don't stay in that place. So there might be an initial response where we kind of overreact, or we are dysregulated, and we react from that fight or flight response. But those happen less and less, and we don't stay in that state for very long. It's almost like as soon as it comes out, there's that moment of oh wow, what just happened there? I kind of went back into a place where, I feel like we've worked through some of that stuff. So it's like there's that instant acknowledgement of, oh no, this isn't where we want to be. And so at that point, we might just kind of take a break and go off and do some contemplation, thinking, meditation, whatever, go hit some golf balls in the backyard, whatever we need to do to sort of cool off and do that introspection of what was coming up for me there, what was being triggered for me. And then when we come back to talk about it, it's like, yeah, so this is what was, what I was feeling in that moment. And I recognized that it didn't necessarily match what we were trying to discuss. So I hope this helps. It's important to remember that we get into relationships for a reason, and those reasons are meant to be positive. So we're no longer living in a time where, at least in most parts of the world, where people are being forced into marriage, right? So most people are choosing this, or choosing long-term cohabitation, or choosing monogamy, or choosing to define the relationship in certain ways, whether that's monogamous or not. So, when we go into these relationships, it's important to know what you're choosing, right? And what your goals are. What are your common goals? Besides just hey, we're sharing this rent and, this space or whatever. It's and obviously early on in the relationship, it can be very scary to talk about goals. And I don't mean you're needing to plan the next 30 years of your life, because, my husband and I certainly didn't do that when we married at 24 and 25, right? Our goal at that point was he was still in university and we were buying a house. And so, short-term goals were okay, so we need to get the education piece taken care of, and we need to create this foundation of our house, and all of these things were at play. But there was also this underlying goal of we're building something together. And we might not have been able to articulate it at the time of what exactly are we building. That came over time and it got redefined and it evolves and it grows. But when you're still feeling that connection, you can really sort of communicate what those new goals or new dreams are going to be. And of course, now being close to 50 and Donnie's 50, we're talking about the next point in our lives. Like, what does that look like? So maybe, early on in the beginning, it's like our 1 year goal is to do these things together to sort of build that foundation. And then our 5 year goal is, da 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 da. And just really talking about those things. So just knowing that you are the director, the controllers of your relationship, rather than just sort of letting life sort of push you around and along and just going along for the ride. Because that's when I feel like we get more dinged up, right? Like if we're floating and we're not quite sure of what our ultimate goals and dreams are, we're more likely to just kind of get swept away in things that aren't necessarily positive for our lives. So getting on the same page as far as goals and dreams is really important, but starting that process with yourself is really where it begins, right? So they need to get real on their goals and dreams. You need to get real on yours. And then you need to come together and discuss, do these align? And if they don't align, is there ways that we can find common ground so that we can still be in this relationship together while still honoring the independent beings that make up the relationship, and to be respectful of everyone's desires and needs. So I hope this helps, and I hope you have a fantastic day. Thank you for joining me. Namaste.